Next, let's take a look at some lighting options by opening up composition number 2, called Lighting Options. If we open up the composition panel by moving the timeline down a little bit, we can see what appears to be a bright white area inside our composition. However, if we change our views from off to wireframe, we can see that there are actually 3 different layers here, as are noted in the timeline. We have a distant wall on the left, a wall on the right, and a floor layer, with a camera looking at all of them. Now we're looking through a custom view, so we can move the view around with our Orbit camera tool. So if we go back up to our fast previews and change back to OpenGL Interactive, we can see that it's just plain white. Now in 3D environments, we have the ability to add lights. If we don't have any lights assigned to our scene, After Effects will simply use the layers values for luminance and not cast any shadows at all. Because every object in our scene is a layer in After Effects, creating a new light is the same as creating any other layer. We'll go to Layer and create a new layer. Here we can see that lights are an option and have the shortcut key Ctrl-Alt-Shift-L. On a Mac, you'll use Command-Option-Shift-L. By selecting this, we'll get a new dialog box asking us to describe the light settings. Again, all of this is available to us inside the timeline if we decide to change it or even animate it over time. This is just an easy way to set up a light before we introduce it into the timeline. So first, we'll name this Spotlight. The light types are here, and there are several different types that we can choose from. We can see there is a parallel light, spotlight, point light, and ambient light, and these all work differently. The parallel light is similar to a distant light, something like the sun, which is very far away and creates an even amount of light from one direction. The spotlight is a light that casts a certain angle of light. The point light is something like an orb of light, casting light in all directions, almost like a light bulb. Last is the ambient light, and we'll get to this one a little bit later, but ambient light is going to cast light throughout your entire scene. For our first light, we'll simply stick with spotlight and the default values described. We'll use an intensity value of 100. Intensity is going to describe how bright the light is. In After Effects, I can make a light more intense than 100%. The cone angle describes how wide the light is going to be, and its angle from its center around the outside of the round light. And the cone feather is going to be the fall off, or how soft the edge of our spotlight is going to be. We'll click OK and see our light show up in our scene. Now that the light has been introduced into our 3D environment, After Effects no longer relies merely on the layers color to describe the luminance, but uses the light instead. Here inside the scene, we can see several different properties of our light. With the light selected in the timeline, we'll type AA on the keyboard to reveal the options for that light. Of course, it's a spotlight, and here we could change that if we wanted to. We can't animate this property, but we can change it from one property to another if we decide to modify this later on. The intensity will describe how brightly the light is being cast. If I change the intensity to 0, we have no light in our scene, but because we have a light in our scene, After Effects is going to use the value of that light to describe the light in the 3D environment. Therefore, even though it's 0, we're not seeing all of the other layers as bright white. On the other hand, we can change the value of our light above 100. If we change this to 200%, we can see an obvious change in the way the fall-off is for the light. We'll take a look at that in a minute. We'll change this back to 100 and click OK. We have different colors that the light can cast, which we can change by clicking on the color chip or using the eyedropper. Our cone angle can be modified here, and we can see the update inside the comp window as described by the ring around the outside of the light. This is the angle by which the light comes off of the center point. So a smaller cone angle will describe a much more focused light. We'll change our cone angle back to 90. Our cone feather will describe where the fall-off is for our light. So from the center all the way out to the edge of the light, a gradient is created. Here in this configuration, it starts at 50%, then the gradient is drawn all the way to the edge, down to 0 where it becomes soft. If we change this all the way to 100, our gradient fall-off for our light starts in the middle of the light, then quickly falls off to no light at the edge of our cone angle. If we change our cone feather to 0, there is no fall-off at all, and we can see the sharp edge between where the light is casting light and where it is not described by the cone angle. Let's take a quick look at another composition called number 2A, multi-lights. We'll jump here for just a second to see that we have a single red light. Now, all lights are additive. If we duplicate this by using Control D or Command D on a Mac, you can see very quickly that the intensity of this red light has in fact doubled. If we click and drag on the Y-axis and move this down in the composition, we can see where these two lights overlap. There is definitely an obvious change in intensity for these lights. We'll move this over by using the X-axis and change the color of our light by typing AA on the keyboard and changing the color to green. Here we can see that the two color channels are mixing together, producing a yellow color where these two lights overlap. Last, we'll duplicate the entire light, then move it over to the right, clicking and dragging on the X-axis. Typing AA for this light, we'll be able to change the color from green to blue. In the very center, we can see that the three channels of light, red, green, and blue, are going to be additive, much like the channels of video in After Effects. Where two layers overlap, we get yellow, magenta, and cyan, and in the very center, white. Additionally, in this scene, we can see that, like a camera, each light has a point of interest. Here, at one edge of the icon for the light, we can see the point of interest, and just like a camera, we can type A on the keyboard to reveal the point of interest in the timeline. We can move the point of interest around, or even create an animation for it, and wherever this point of interest is, the light is going to have to move with it. Also, like a camera, if we click and drag on any of the axes for the light, we'll move both the light and the point of interest. If we click and drag on the light alone, we'll move the light without the point of interest, and it will continue to look at the point of interest for direction. Again, we can always turn this off by going up to Layer, then under Transform, changing our Auto Orientation property to Off will disable the point of interest for the light. We're going to want to keep this on, so we'll hit Cancel, but that option is available to you if you want to change it.